Welcome to the Shootin' Show, brought to you in part by Gun Owners of America, Larry Pratt, Executive Director, and by Shooting Times Magazine, and also by Springfield Armory, Wesson Firearms, the United States Practical Shooting Association, Dillon Precision, Ducks Unlimited, the International Handgun Metallic Silhouette Association, Clark Custom Guns, Shotgun News, Fort Knox, Wyoming Arms, and a number of other good friends and supporters.
Hello, I'm Johnny Rowland, your host of the Shootin' Show, and welcome this week again to another edition of the Shootin' Show. We have some great guests for you on today's program. We have some gun tests I really think you're going to find interesting. So please sit back and relax, and let me remind you, get a pencil and piece of paper, because you know we're going to have some addresses and phone numbers that you'll really need to write down. So let's relax and, heck, let another Shootin' Show begin. Now, friends, what I'm holding here is a new gun from imported by Inter Arms. It's a Star, which is one of the older Spanish companies. It's a Fire Star. Now, the Fire Star has been around for, several years, a couple of years anyway, that I'm aware of. But this is a new caliber for the Fire Star. It's in 40 Smith & Wesson. And we've talked about the 40 Smith & Wesson on more than one occasion on our program here. And I personally think the 40 is an awfully nice compromise caliber. I'm not that great a fan of the 9mm, and the 40 gives a good compromise between size, certainly size of the cartridge, size of the gun it can be fired in, and power. In looking at this little Fire Star, it's really a potent package. As many times I've said before, I don't recommend, and those of us who work on the program here really do not recommend semi-automatic handguns for beginners or for people who are casual shooters who are going to keep a gun for home defense and are not going to practice with the gun and really work at learning to shoot it. But for someone who desires a semi-automatic, certainly with good power characteristics, which this gun will definitely have, this is one that is certainly worth taking a look at. It looks to be very well made. I haven't examined or shot a vast number of Star handguns over the years, but just looking at this one, it's all steel with rubber grips. It looks to be very well made, and we've been shooting this gun now for several days and have put a number of rounds through it. It is both accurate within its design limitations as far as distance. It also functions really well. We haven't had a malfunction with this gun in shooting a number of the Winchester flat point full metal jacket cartridges. Now, I recently talked with a woman whose husband had bought her this particular gun, in fact, and she was not familiar with firearms, was certainly not familiar with semi-automatics, and he bought this for a home defense gun for her. I think he was out of town a good bit, and she shot the gun several times and it didn't function properly. Well, here's a classic case of no one had given her instruction, a classic case of a small semi-automatic, even though this has a steel frame, classic case of locked wrist. She had not had any training at all in shooting a semi-automatic handgun, and she was loosely holding the gun and shooting it without a locked wrist, and they simply will not function reliably. The smaller guns, the alloy frame guns, even sometimes the government models, if you don't have a firm grip and a locked wrist when you're shooting it. But in my hands, and of course I am very conscious of how to shoot these powerful but small semi-automatic guns. You'll have a good firm grip and that locked wrist, and this one has functioned 100% for us. Another point I think is very important to make about semi-automatics. You know, friends, when you bring one of these home, they're just machines. Guns don't have a brain. They don't have any sort of personality, would be good or evil. It's just a machine. Now, on a semi-automatic, a lot of things happen for these things to work, and we've said this before on our program. The gun has to fire, and of course it has to push the slide back from recoil, eject the cartridge case, cock the hammer, pick up another one from the magazine and push it into the chamber so it can be fired again. Well, that's a lot going on. You have a lot of metal surfaces that are working against each other or certainly in contact with each other. And just like an automobile, there's a break-in period. We recommend at least 200 rounds be shot through one of these guns and then it cleaned to know for sure whether or not it's going to be reliable. The magazines on these guns, on any semi-automatic, is absolutely critical for its functioning. These little magazine lips at the top which hold the cartridge have got to be within a certain design specification for them to work properly. And things happen, people drop the magazines on the floor, on concrete, and sometimes they're bent. And trust me on this one, if your magazine is not in the proper configuration, they won't work. I mean, they just won't. So there are a lot of things that have to be considered when buying a semi-automatic handgun for the new shooter. Again, we recommend a revolver because you can leave a revolver in a drawer for years and then take the gun out and shoot it. If you're not going to invest a little time and invest in a few cartridges to go out and really familiarize yourself with these guns. However, for the individual who really wants to do that and has a need for a small semi-automatic handgun with a lot of power, I think it would certainly behoove anyone to take a look at this Firestar, if the rest of them out there are any representation of this gun. Now, we took this gun down. It's very simple on how it comes down, and of course you know I'm going to feature when I'm showing a gun here, it's going to be unloaded, and then I'll check it again to be sure what I saw was right the first time. But the design on these guns is very similar to the CZ75. The Springfield Armory gun, of course, is the P9, which we're very familiar with, and that's what the design is similar to, in my estimation anyway. These guns have a magazine disconnect, or magazine safety, if you want to call it that. It will not function. You cannot drop the hammer unless you have a magazine in the gun. That's the way it's designed. Some people will like that, some won't. If you don't like that feature, it's very easily modified. It will probably void your warranty. But that's one way you can keep these guns safe. They just won't function at all without a magazine in them. You can't even fire them single shot if you don't have the magazine in place. So the gun comes down very simply, and looking at all the internal surfaces, it is a good design. It's very cleanly executed as far as the metallic surfaces that I've been able to look at. It has what looks to be, and I don't know for sure, it could be a beryllium copper extractor. Like I said, I don't know for sure. It's a different color from the rest of the steel on the gun. I'm sure it's very hard. It's a good looking extractor. Just a really well made small gun. Now then, to carry this gun, and that's what a lot of people, police officers, citizens who are licensed to carry concealed handguns are going to want to know how to carry it. Well, that's a good question, and one that I haven't fully answered for myself yet, but we do have some suggestions. Now, this gun is a single-action semi-automatic pistol, similar, in fact, to the 1911. All right, the 1911 has a grip safety, and of course this gun is unloaded, and just for my own peace of mind, I'll check it again. Yes, it is, and I'll drop the hammer on it. Okay, the 1911 has a grip safety as well as a thumb safety, which actually is one of the very safest handguns that can be gotten if you follow procedure on it. But the little Firestar does not have a grip safety. It has an ambidextrous safety, the mechanism here to release it and put it on. It has one on right and on left side, but it is still a single action gun. So you have a couple of ways you can carry this gun. You can carry it with the chamber empty, such as it is right now, with a loaded magazine in place, and with the hammer down. I'm decocking it there. All right, this is a completely safe way to carry this gun. You have a loaded magazine, and your hammer's down on an empty chamber. And to put the gun in action, all you would do is rack the slide, pull it all the way back, and load it that way, and then you could apply the manual safety. And at that time, the hammer would be cocked and then apply the safety. Personally, I would not carry this little gun with the hammer cocked and safety on, because the safety mechanism here is very easily manipulated. It's designed that way. For shooting it on handling on the range, or when you're shooting the gun, that would be when I would use the safety mechanism. But I would not carry this gun with a cartridge chambered with the safety on, because if you put it in your pocket or back in a holster, there's a chance that you could wipe that safety off, and of course then the gun would fire. It does have a firing pin safety. It won't fire unless the trigger is depressed, but something could snag. You could push the safety off. You have a cocked pistol, and the triggers are fairly light on these guns, on this one anyway, and something might snag it and could set the gun off. So I don't think that's the way I would carry it at all. There's another alternative to carrying this gun loaded. And a good friend of mine who is a teacher of security guards and special training for all sorts of police and military officers mentioned to me that since this gun has a firing pin safety, it would be possible to carry the gun chamber loaded with the hammer down. And here's his reasoning. And I just lowered the hammer, of course. His reasoning is this: if you needed to get the gun in action, you might have to do it one-handed, because these are defensive guns. This is not primarily a hunting handgun. This is a defensive gun, whether for a homeowner or police officer. And you know what? One of your hands might be busy while you're trying to get your gun out. Somebody might have a hold of you. Some drugged up individual could be trying to cut you somehow or shoot you. One of your hands might be busy. You need to be able to get the gun into action with one hand. So his suggestion was the gun can be carried, and of course you've got to observe all safety precautions here. The gun can be carried, safety off and the hammer down. Now, to put the gun in action, what you do, you would draw the gun and cock it with your thumb to operate the gun one-handed. And I can see some merit in that. And this just comes to the individual, whatever your preference would be. It does have a firing pin safety. It will not fire if it's dropped, even with safety off, hammer down, because of the firing pin safety. And it's all steel. It's a very good design, certainly in my opinion. And that would be the other way to carry the gun. You carry it either chamber, empty, loaded magazine. If you're going to carry it with the round in the chamber, personally I feel it would be safer have the hammer down and the safety off, and then of course the gun would be ready for instant use. But this is a decision that I can't make for you. And again, if you want to carry one of these guns, you need to get it and talk to several people whom you believe in and form an opinion from there. I think it is a safe mechanism as long as you use proper precautions. And of course that includes we never point the gun at something we can't afford to destroy. We always keep our finger off the trigger, and you darn sure better know the position of that hammer and where your safety is. So we're going to shoot the gun in just a moment and let you see what it looks like. Now, we chronographed this gun a little earlier with the 180 grain Winchester flat point jacketed bullet, and believe it or not, out of this, and it looks to me like about a 3 or 3.5 inch barrel, this bullet chronographed at 875 feet a second on an average. Well, you know, that's pretty good. That's still over 300 foot-pounds of energy. It's quite a bit beyond the 9mm in this same gun. It's quite a bit beyond the 38 Special in the small revolvers. And it is pretty easy to shoot if you use the proper grip and proper techniques. So I was most impressed. This same bullet out of our Glock 40 S&W runs about 940 or 50 feet a second. So for its small size, it's still pretty much a high performance loading. So we're going to shoot that in just a moment. And I'm going to take out the magazine and we're going to check again. Yes, it is unloaded.
The Shooting Show will be back in 1 minute after this break for your local cable comedy or television station.
It's fast. It's exciting. It's challenging. It's fun. This is the USPSA, United States Practical Shooting Association, the fastest growing sport in America today. If you'd like to become more proficient and confident with your firearm, meet new and interesting people, and compete with thousands around the world, join the USPSA. There's a local chapter near you.
We've had a number of questions regarding the 1911 type pistols versus some of the others, such as the double action automatic handguns. And friends, all I can say is there are many designs of handguns, and the newest one is probably, I suppose, be the Glock, which is a very fine gun. There are many other double action guns from Smith & Wesson, from Ruger, and Choate also has the Double Eagle, and they're all basically good guns. There's nothing we can find wrong with them. However, there is not a concept that is better than the basic gun that John Browning designed in 1911. And it all comes down to training. Supposedly there have been, according to a number of different sources, there have been a number of accidental discharges on 1911 type guns when the individuals in the armories or police station or wherever in the military were decocking these guns on a live round. Now wait a minute. In my opinion, which is, I do have a number of years experience in handling these guns, and I have talked to and visited with and questioned many experts throughout the firearms industry on technique and what they think. And of course, we shoot guns and handle guns a lot more than the average person, a lot more than the average police officer for that matter. And it has come to my realization that, in my opinion, why would anyone ever decock a 1911 type gun over a live round period? There's no point. These guns were designed to be carried, cocked, and the safety locked on. Even if something happens and the safety gets pushed off, and we'll check it again, we know it's unloaded. Even if something happens and the safety is pushed off, if one of these guns is functioning properly, it still won't fire if you press the trigger. So you have also a rebounding firing pin, which it doesn't contact the primer unless the hammer falls on it anyway. And of course, a number of these guns now have firing pin safeties, which lock the firing pin in place until the trigger's pushed. But the original concept was so good, in truth, there's no reason to decock one of these guns over a live round. Now, the way to do it, if you have a loaded 1911 and you want to make the gun completely safe and not capable of being fired, take the magazine out of the gun, and we have a round in the chamber supposedly, push the gun off safe, do not touch the trigger under any circumstance. Do not touch the trigger. Hold the gun out away in a safe direction and pull the slide back and eject the cartridge. There's no reason that I know of to decock a 1911 type gun over a live round. It's not designed to be done that way. There's no point in it. If you, let's say you do have, and just a double check, we're going to let the hammer down now on an empty chamber. If you want to let the hammer down, do it on an empty chamber. All right? To carry one of these guns with the hammer down, some people, and I've seen them carried like this over the years, you have a half-cock notch. Well, that half-cock notch is there for one reason and one reason only. If the gun was being cocked for some reason or another, and your finger slipped off the gun, your finger happened to slip, it would catch before the gun would fire. The half-cock notch is there just to keep the hammer from going down on the firing pin to prevent an inadvertent accidental discharge. So it's not safe to be carried there. Some of these guns will actually drop the hammer from the half-cock notch, but it's there strictly as a safety mechanism. So that's not a safe way to carry these guns. If you want to carry it hammer down with chamber loaded, something could happen, and this hammer could somehow be brushed back by a limb or a door surface or anything you might bump into. And you know what? I don't know if it'd fire or not, but there's always that possibility that the gun could go off. These guns were designed for one method. There are three conditions that people talk about when they refer to the 1911 design. Condition 1, which is chamber loaded, the hammer cocked and safety locked on, that's condition 1. Condition 2, and let's decock it here, condition 2 is safety off, hammer down, which I think is very dangerous. I don't do that at all under any circumstance. I think it's a very dangerous condition. And then the third condition is condition 3, which is a loaded magazine and an empty chamber, and the hammer down on empty chamber. If it bothers you to have a cocked pistol, we'll do it over, decock it over an empty chamber. Never do it over a live round. There's no point in that at all. And a lot of the designs that have come along, the double action semi-automatics, strictly are there because people did not know how, including law enforcement, including military, were not properly trained in how these guns worked, and they had accidental discharges. Another problem that a number of police departments have had around the country was with the single action automatics was the gun was cocked, and then, and we'll check it again, they pushed the safety off on these guns and put their finger on the trigger. Now that is something we absolutely, there's no need, there's no point in doing it. You don't put your finger on that trigger until you're ready to shoot. If a police officer was holding someone at gunpoint, this, unless he is preparing to shoot, he might push his safety off. Keep your finger off the trigger. Keep your finger off unless you anticipate shooting. Because when you put your finger on the trigger of these guns and the safety is off, they'll go off when you pull it. So this is something I think is so important that needs to be covered. And I'm sure I'll get phone calls this week on account of it. But something that we felt like we needed to cover on the 1911. Well, let's go back to our Firestar now. Now, friends, we're going to let you watch the Firestar in recoil up close. And again, you'll notice how small the gun is compared to my hand. It's a very potent package if you spend the time to learn to look at it and learn how to operate it properly. So what we're going to do, I've inserted the magazine in the base. We have 6 in the magazine. I'm going to retract the slide all the way to the rear, and now we're going to let it go. And of course, to handle it here, I will apply the safety. So this will at least give you an idea of what this gun looks like. We'll shoot it several times and let you see how the gun recoils and how it functions in my hands. All right. And you'll notice that the, of course, slide has locked back. It's told us that it's empty and ready to be charged with a fresh magazine. But it does have a pretty stiff recoil. Again, though, you have to realize at the power of the package, it is absolutely manageable and something that I don't think would intimidate many people at all. It just requires that proper grip and locked wrist. Well, let's try the gun now on some steel targets. All right, friends, let's take a look at this Firestar in the 40 S&W caliber. And of course, I want to remind you, we always wear eye protection. I have these excellent soft gel hearing plugs in my ears. They're very effective. We always want to retain our sight and our hearing when we leave the range, of course. There's just no point in taking a chance with our sight or our hearing. You know, shooting should not be painful. And if it hurts you, if it hurts your eyes or your ears, it's just not fun. And if you have a new shooter and you're out shooting and it hurts their ears, well, they won't want to come back with you. So we always want to stress safety, of course, and proper vision and hearing protection. So let's look at the little Firestar 40 S&W on these steel plates down here and see what it looks like. And of course, I will apply the safety because I have one bullet left in the gun. And this was where I would use the safety, would be around here on the range when I was shooting and the hammer's cocked, then apply the safety. I tell you what, folks, it's a heck of a little package. It's extremely well made, and if you're looking for a small but powerful semi-automatic, this is one I definitely recommend you take a look at. You know, friends, we were just shooting the little Firestar just a moment ago, and again, I'm going to have to leave it up to your own discretion on how the gun should be carried. If you do carry the gun with a chamber loaded, such as I'm going to load the chamber here as we speak, the safety has to be off. and of course now the gun's loaded. If you do want to carry it with the hammer down, you're going to have to take all the precautions in lowering the hammer over a live round. Again, you will have a good purchase on the hammer. I'm doing it with my thumb. You may have a system that works better for you. And pull the trigger through and gently let that hammer down very carefully. And of course then at that time you'll have the option. You can put the safety on with the hammer down and everything is locked. The action is locked. The hammer is locked. But you're going to have to be careful doing it. Since it doesn't have a grip safety, again, I can't recommend carrying the gun over a live round with the hammer cocked. You can carry it with the chamber empty, with the hammer down if you want to. The other thing would be, in this case, I will recommend, if you really have a good purchase on how the gun works and can manipulate it, you can drop the hammer, or not drop it, but let it down easily with your thumb over a live round, and then since the firing pin is blocked, it cannot fire unless the trigger's pulled and the hammer is cocked back. So again, I'm going to have to leave that up to you. But on the 1911, we never recommend letting the hammer down over a live round. And this is going to be a decision you have to make. But again, the Firestar is very well made, something that for the person who is more familiar with guns or the professional is certainly worth taking a look at.
The Shooting Show will be back in 1 minute after this break for your local cable comedy or television station. We want to remind you of our good friends at Shooting Times magazine, the absolute best general information shooting magazine available on your newsstand today. They have all sorts of articles on handguns and long guns and hunting and all sorts of information about reloading and gun safety and many, many other fine features by some of your favorite firearms writers. For subscription information, call Shooting Times at 1-800-727-4353. Shooting Times, the best there is. Now, friends, by just looking, you'd never guess that this petite young lady is carrying not one, but in fact 2 handguns. And this is the fantastic concept of the shadow concealment systems. And you'll notice as she unbuttons her sweater, she's carrying a full-size .357 on her left, and she's carrying a Ladysmith on her right. This is one of the neatest concepts that I have ever seen for concealed holsters. And here she is again. Again, you'd never guess that she's carrying a full-size .45 ACP semi-automatic handgun along with 2 magazines in the Shadow Concealment Systems holsters. They fit inside the pants, and it's amazing how comfortable they are. And this is something we highly recommend because in many areas, concealed handgun permits are available. I would sincerely suggest getting a catalog from Shadow Concealment Systems at Post Office Box 3952, Wilmington, North Carolina. Their zip code is 28406, or give them a call at area 919-791-6656. Trust me on this one. This is a great idea and a tremendous concept, and a lot of us could really find uses for these.
When you're armed, you can just say no.
Now, friends, it's time for our weekly information from Gun Owners of America. But before we start, I want to mention something to you that applies to us here in Louisiana, but will also be applicable in a number of other states. Recently, I came across the information that in our upcoming legislative session for the state of Louisiana, over 20 gun-related bills have been submitted, and only 3 of which are really acceptable or what we would think usable for gun owners. These bills range from completely outlawing semi-automatic guns in the state of Louisiana to a prohibition of any firearm within 1,000 feet of a school or school property, which would even go so far as to say if you had a gun in your vehicle, you couldn't even drive by a school without breaking the law. If you lived across the street from a school under this new legislation, you couldn't own a gun in your home if you were closer than 1,000 feet from school property. It would also affect some hunting regulations around the state. And these bills are not unique to the state of Louisiana. Friends, we have people who are set on taking our firearms away. And if you watched out on television the news that of the riots in Los Angeles, those people that were armed were able to protect their property. So I think it's just a travesty of reason for these people to want to disarm us in these dangerous and turbulent times that we're in today. And these times are not related to firearms ownership at all. They're related to social breakdown. So this is something that all of us need to be aware of, and you need to write your state senators and representatives with your feelings about these anti-gun bills. And it doesn't just apply here in Louisiana, it applies nationwide. So now let's hear from Larry Pratt with Gun Owners of America.
This is Larry Pratt with a commentary from Gun Owners of America. Lost in the political reports from New Hampshire and Pennsylvania was an issue that may well decide the 1992 election, the issue of gun control. The pundits like to talk about the issues such as health insurance, electing Senator Harris Wofford over his Republican challenger, Richard Thornburgh. They debate how the economy affects voters in New Hampshire and other primary states. Yet they forget that the so-called Reagan Democrats switched to the Republican column because of issues like gun control. With Thornburgh's at best lukewarm support for the civil liberties of gun owners, it is no wonder that Pennsylvania Reagan Democrats chose on other issues than firearms to pick their new senator. And it was no accident that Republican challenger Pat Buchanan posed with several rifles at a New Hampshire firearms plant. The firearms issue was like a trump card played by the Bush campaign in 1988. In several key states such as Pennsylvania and Texas, the Bush campaign drove the issue through the Dukakis campaign's heart. Yet once in office, Bush raised taxes on the Reagan Democrats while arguing for capital gains taxes perceived to benefit only the rich. And Bush racked up a record that only could give comfort to Handgun Control Incorporated. Instead of pointing out that Patrick Purdy should have been in jail before he bought his AK-47 if the criminal system had been doing its job, Bush banned the importation of that and other semi-automatic rifles. Then drug czar Bill Bennett, who would have felt naked without the armed guards who sat in his driveway, worked hard to ban guns he decided you and I didn't need. Then Attorney General Thornburgh agreed, or was pressured, to give away a national waiting period and a legal ban on other rifles and shotguns if Congress accepted other administration proposals. America's gun owners have been left to wonder whether a President Dukakis could have done as much damage as pro-gun President Bush. It is a truism of politics that you do not give away things which your base of support cares about deeply. Yet the Bush administration has spent 3 years playing politics with the Second Amendment rights of the American people. He has sown the wind and may reap the whirlwind at the polls.
For more information on Gun Owners of America, write to them at GOA, 8001 Forbes Place, Suite 102 in Springfield, Virginia. The zip code is 22151, or you can give them a call at area 703-321-8585. Now, friends, I think we have a really interesting piece coming up from you that we got from Choate Machine and Tool Company. A lot of you are familiar with their products, and they're going to take us through their factory and show us how some of these things are made. I think you'll really find it entertaining.
From the most primitive weapon to the most modern. If you've ever owned a weapon of any kind, you may have considered how the shape or build of that weapon came about. In general, it was designed by a specific manufacturer and assembly line produced. You may have also wondered how weapons were modified and redesigned to benefit specific needs, such as police, military, sportsmen, or weapons enthusiasts. Much of the new technology in weaponry started as local gunsmiths began making modifications in their own weapons and the weapons of friends. Here is the story of how one gunsmith operation grew into a world leader in weapons technology.
Since 1976, Choate Machine and Tool Company Incorporated has pioneered the manufacturing of synthetic stocks for the firearms industry, primarily used by the military and law enforcement. Much of the product is also used by the firearms enthusiasts, sportsmen, and the major gun manufacturers across the world. Choate Machine and Tool began as a local gunsmith, operating from a 625-square-foot building at Bald Knob, Arkansas. And today, the firm occupies a structure 76 times larger. In 1988, Qualitron Tool plastic inject molding and Mastercraft invest casting was added, and now Choate offers everything from engineering and tool design through the complete manufacturing process. So sure of their quality are the Choate family that all of their products carry a lifetime warranty. The company was founded on giving the customer first quality and first-rate service. Recently, Choate adopted digitizing and computer design in its process, and now are much faster in the actual production of prototype products. In engineering circles, these new tools are called CAD and CAM. These names are short for computer-aided design and computer-aided machining. Choate added the computer technology to enhance the design and performance of their products. The computer scans the part surface and actually sets the stage for the design of the mold that will end up being used for the product itself. The data is simulated on the screen, so technicians get an idea of the look of a prototype before work actually begins on preparing a mold. Along with the company's DataSculpt software, the Choate technicians are able to use a point-range probe for sensing. This gives accuracy of measurement, including the difficult task of edge finding. This surveyor system measures several 100,000 points on any grid system and gives fine feature details as well as contours. The software also allows for smooth point setting and creates a surface tailored to a specific need. The Choate manufacturing shop also includes EDM, electrical discharge machining, and CNC, computer numerical control machining. After designers refine the design with the computer, a model is produced, and then engineers use finite element analysis to optimize the shape and angle and other critical design elements. Choate machines then mill a model mold into wood, and often wax parts are used to simulate the actual product before the permanent mold is cut. New firearm parts can now be designed and analyzed almost entirely on the computer system before a prototype is made. The process begins with production of a pattern. This pattern is made by injecting wax into a metal die. Patterns are fastened to runners, and runners are attached to a pouring cup. Patterns, runners, and pouring cup comprise the cluster or tree. The ceramic shell mold technique involves dipping the entire cluster into a ceramic slurry, draining it, then coating it with fine ceramic sand. After drying, this process is repeated again and again, using progressively coarser grades of ceramic material, until a self-supporting shell has been formed. The coated cluster is then placed in a steam autoclave, where the pattern melts and runs out through the gates, runners, and pouring cup. This leaves a ceramic shell containing cavities of the casting shape desired, with passages leading to them. The ceramic shell molds are then fired to burn out the last traces of pattern material and to preheat the mold in preparation for casting, usually in the range of 1600 to 2000 degrees. The hot molds are then poured, utilizing static pressure of the molten metal heat. After the poured molds have cooled, the mold material is removed from the casting cluster. Individual castings are then removed from the cluster by means of cutoff wheels. The casting is then ready for secondary operations. Then, following any secondary operations, the castings are ready to ship. This new technology improves the shooting accuracy of firearms and the durability of the weapon itself. The CAD/CAM system builds prototypes the way customers want them and has cut tool expense and lead time in half. The entrepreneurs with small projects can build tooling and manufacture parts ready for the market without big costs. And from its beginning in the firearm industry, Choate is now branching out into the oil field, automobile, mining, and at present even the golf club industry. But firearms are our mainstay. For example, our pistol grip stocks for nearly all production guns have changed the face of law enforcement weapons and make the gun easier to handle, especially in situations where the officer might need a hand free. It is a replacement for the factory wood. As always, there are no alterations or modifications needed on the firearms, regardless of the brand. Side folding stocks, like this one on the Remington 870, are custom handmade at Choate, and the quality and durability is not compromised in any way. All of the part assemblies are of solid steel construction. All metal parts are precision cast for a lifetime of service. Side folding stocks are offered as a kit, which includes the stock and matching fore-end. The folding stock for the Ruger 1022 makes it a very versatile and compact rifle. The folding mechanism is the same as the Mini 14 and has been hot acid bath blued. Choate's extension increases the firepower of a 5-shot shotgun to 7, 8, 9, and 10-shot. The 10-shot extension is designed for shotguns with a barrel length of 26 inches or more. Available for S&W, Winchester, Mossberg, and Browning. The full pistol grip and the Ruger Mini 14 folding stock are made of DuPont Zytel ST801. This is the same indestructible plastic that is on military rifles. It is virtually impossible to break. Choate has improved the Remington conventional stock. This butt stock is an alternative to a conventional wooden stock. Made of fiberglass-filled plastic, which is 4 times stronger than wood. Furnished to Remington Arms, Ithaca, LA County, and others. The flash suppressor for the Ruger Mini 14 is made of solid steel. Features a sight like the original M14, offered in blue and stainless. The new Remington 700 stock is the same stock we furnish Remington Arms, made of DuPont Rhinite. Weather does not affect this stock, and accuracy is not a problem. Available for the long action, 270, 280, 30-06, and 7mm. The same stock is available for the Savage 110 and Mauser's 95, 96, and 98. Again, our versatility shows with the popular plastic ice scraper. We've offered it for years, but it's now available in stainless and solid steel blued. It can be used as a key ring and is ideal for a woman to carry as protection. Our technology keeps changing to keep up with the increasing demands of a modernizing world. For some time, Choate has been dominant in the police and military weapons business, and now company officials are out to capture their share of the sporting weapons and sporting goods industry too. Choate is interested in your ideas and your needs. So, from idea to concept to computer to mold to production to in-field use, Choate does it all. Our products are built on a strong foundation of quality, of service, and new products are a specialty. Choate currently makes stocks for Remington Arms Company, Savage Arms Company, and Ithaca Gun Company, and delivers a variety of custom-made products. We also offer lifetime warranty, and our no questions asked replacement policy will always be in effect. This policy ensures your total satisfaction. Choate will process your order promptly, and you'll get your product a few days after order. We always have same-day shipping worldwide. Choate Machine and Tool, a commitment to excellence.
Stay tuned for more of the Shootin' Show after this break for your local cable company or television station. friends, we want to be sure to mention our good friends down at Britain's Gun Shop at 517 Louisiana Avenue here in Shreveport, Louisiana. They have all sorts of reloading components, all sorts of new guns, whether they be handguns, rifles, shotguns, used guns, just whatever you might have in mind. And if they don't have it, they can darn sure get it. They're very fine people to do business with. They're friendly and helpful and courteous to their clientele, whether you know much about guns or not. We certainly recommend, if you're in the Shreveport area, anywhere in the Arklatex, to stop by Britain's Gun Shop in Shreveport. And you never know, you might even catch yours truly down there looking at some new firearm. Incidentally, some of our shooting show test guns are on sale down at Britain's. So for all your shooting needs, come to Britain's at 517 Louisiana Avenue, Shreveport, Louisiana. 71101 is the zip code. Their phone number is area 318-221-4131.
Another gun we're going to look at, which is most unusual. A lot of people haven't seen these guns before. This is the Intratec Scorpion. Now, friends, this probably looks like what some of the anti-gunners would like to call an assault pistol, when in fact it does have rather ferocious looks, which in fact may be more useful than not at some point, but it is a .22 long rifle. It has a magazine that holds about 25 or so rounds, and this is the first one of these guns that I have actually handled and shot, and I'm pretty impressed. It is a very simple system that they use for these guns. This magazine resembles some Ramline magazines that I have seen, and in fact it may be one that has Intratec on the side, and these people are down in Florida. This gun is made in the United States. It is a very, shall we say, robust design. You will cock the bolt with these handles, which are on both sides. It has a large, strong, and somewhat adjustable set of sights on the gun. And here's how the gun works. You will cock the bolt like so, and you'll see it come back, and there's the chamber. It's easy to check to see if it's loaded or not. And you have a large ambidextrous safety, which has a very plain S on one side when it's safe and push forward. You've got a big F back here for fire. So I think that's about as direct as can be. The gun has a frame that appears to be some sort of polymer or Zytel or some other synthetic heavy-duty plastic of some kind. And of course the slide and the bolt and the barrel are made of steel. But this little gun definitely has some merit. You know, the good news is that so many of the criminal element, people that through our investigation company I've personally interviewed, and then other people I've talked to that have dealt with a number of convicted felons or whoever else for armed robbery or other things, attacks on people, they really don't tend to be gun enthusiasts. Unlike a lot of the information that you see on television and movies, a lot of these people do not tend to be very familiar with firearms at all. And in fact, that's the good news, because many of these people do not tend to be good shots, unlike what is so prevalent in movies and television. A lot of these people really don't have a very good concept of guns at all, that may have even used one in a crime. So that conjecture is just not true in the movies, that the gun owner is a nut out here, because about 99% of us are not. We're just normal citizens, patriotic Americans who are trying to do what's right. Anyway, but to someone who doesn't know much about firearms, this particular Scorpion pistol with this long magazine here would have some intimidation factor. Even though it's a .22, this could be a case where the looks of the gun alone could keep you from having to shoot someone, because it does have a high intimidation factor. And that's something that is sometimes maybe worth more than we might realize. But it does hold about 20 or 25 or so in the magazine, at least that's what we've put in this one, and it functions very well, and it's relatively inexpensive. So these same people make the Tech 9, which is a 9mm gun, which looks similar to this, and from the information I have, they're very strong, reliable 9mm pistols, if you like a 9mm. So we're going to shoot this in just a moment, but something I think you'll find interesting. This little gun field strips about as easily as anything I ever saw. You mash this button on the rear and the dust cover will come up, and then of course I'm going to put it on safe to do all this, put the safety on safe. You can pull back on the mechanism here and just quite simply just lift it out, and there's your firing pin and your spring there for your hammer. There's the barrel. Here's the trigger mechanism. It's so easy to get to for maintenance and cleaning. So I hope you can see that all right, because this is really a neat system they have. It's very, very simple, and if this one is representative of the rest of them, it works real well. So let's put the gun back together and let's shoot it some. Now friends, I've just loaded this magazine with about 20 cartridges or so, and I believe it does hold about 25, and to tell you the truth, I don't have a manual on this gun, so I don't know for sure, but the way it operates, you'll put the magazine in the magazine well here, and it snaps in place. You have a very positive lock here, and of course I have the safety in the on position, and you'll retract the bolt handles here, and again, as I've said 100 times, if I've said it once, the way these guns work, you have to let it go, let that bolt go for it to cycle. So let's shoot several times. You'll see it has no recoil at all. Now these are primarily, as I see it, fun guns. They're plinkers, something to go out and shoot at tin cans and balloons or whatever else, or even it could be a good camp gun for a small game. Certainly the sights are good enough, but it could be pressed into home defense. Now those of you who think a .22 long rifle is an insignificant caliber, that's not so. A hit with a .22 on an adversary or on an animal is better than a miss with a .50 Browning. So if you can, one of the things that's so attractive about these guns, they are relatively inexpensive. The .22 ammunition is relatively inexpensive. You can practice enough with one of these guns that you can really become proficient with it. So let's see if we can come in kind of close on the little gun. And I say little gun, it's really not a little gun, it's a rather large gun. I'll show you a comparison with the 1911, so it's quite a bit bigger than a 1911, but it's very light and it's easy to handle. Let's shoot the gun several times rapidly, push our safety off. So you can see it has almost no recoil at all. And now let's shoot these steel targets. Now friends, let's watch what this little .22 does to these steel plates over here, and I think you're going to be surprised. All right. And of course we'll see that the one target is hung over there, but it's easy to make multiple hits on it. I believe I'll shoot again. Raise it every time. Of course now we're out of ammunition. So friends, as I said earlier, it's a neat little package, and this gun comes from Intratech down in Florida, and certainly it's worth taking a look at. It's a fun gun, it's easy to shoot, and I'd recommend getting one, playing with it.
Now friends, we sure want to mention Shotgun News, the trading post for anything that shoots. You have over 35,000 firearms bargains, 36 big issues for only $20. Shotgun News, Post Office Box 669, Hastings, Nebraska. Their zip code is 68902. You can call them at area 402-463-4589, or for MasterCard and Visa customers for subscriptions only, call 1-800-345-6923. Shotgun News. Get it today. Don't put it off.
It's fast. It's exciting. It's challenging. It's fun. This is the USPSA, United States Practical Shooting Association, the fastest growing sport in America today. If you'd like to become more proficient and confident with your firearm, meet new and interesting people, and compete with thousands around the world, join the USPSA. There's a local chapter near you.
Now friends, if you have an anti-gun friend, or you know of an anti-gun politician, or you need to make a case for us owning firearms, please get a copy of the JPFO, that's Jews for Preservation of Firearms Ownership, their special report.
This is a report of several pages here. I think it's in fact 4 of actual instances on what happened when people called 911 and they couldn't get any help. It is all the facts here are 100% documented, so we highly recommend getting a copy of this report. Every gun owner ought to have this in his house because you can darn sure make some points that cannot be disputed with the anti-gun politicians and anyone you know who may be anti-gun. You can get this report by writing to Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership at 2872 South Wentworth Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The zip code is 53207, or you can telephone them at area 414-769-0760. The JPFO special report, dial 911 and die. You ought to get a copy of this, friends.
Friends, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of The Shootin' Show. I'm Johnny Rowland, your host, and we hope that we can come back to your house again next week. If you would like to be on our show with some sort of club or music presentation, give us a call at area 318-222-8515. Remember, copies of our shows are available for $10.95 plus postage per weekly program. And we want to remind you to call your local cable companies because we are free to them and we want to be in as many areas as possible. See you next week.